Yay! Okay. Hello, Crystal.
Hi, Fola. How are you?
I'm doing okay. You?
I'm really good. We just finished chatting for about 20 minutes. It's all good.
Pre podcast recording podcast. We should have
Yeah.
like little outtakes, but for sure. This is Connecting to Spirit with Crystal and Fola. So welcome you guys to episode number 8. We were going to talk today about mental health
Mental health.
because that's what
Yeah.
you do, I guess, in Canada as it comes to the 29th of January.
Talk about mental health. Yeah, let's start there. Mental health. I personally believe that mental health should be spoken 365 days. I think that yeah, if you're having anything go on internally, it's, we shouldn't just be vulnerable on the 29th. We shouldn't just be vulnerable for 1 week and get all revved up or whatever the case is. It should be a conversation that should be held 365 days because we come in and out of different trials and tribulations, you know, and we're trying to navigate and we're trying to figure out what's happening internally in our external worlds.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Oh yeah, I agree. And I think because maybe we both work in these areas um, where mental health is the focus, right? That it's like it is our everyday in a way. So we're
Yeah.
constantly being surrounded by like those themes. And I was just trying to think as you're talking about like when did this whole like mental health stigma campaigning sort of thing happen? Like it began what, maybe like over a decade? Has it been a couple decades? I'm trying to think. But I feel like I moved back to,
Just in the last decade, Fola,
right? It's not that
not
long.
even in the last 5, 6 years.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it hasn't really been that long, right?
Yeah, my brother passed away 9 years ago, and there was no talk of any sort.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and it's a conversation because the suicide rate is so high. I've read 1 in 10. I've read some places 1 in 11 here in Alberta. The mental health I've read. Yeah, so if you think about it, we should be very compassionate when we're going into like we're bumping into a stranger. One in 10 people that we're bumping into in a grocery store, or potentially even in a mall, are battling depression and
Mm-hmm.
mental health issues. How sad is that?
Yeah, I think it's like one in five people suffer from a mental health disorder
Yeah. Hmm.
at one point in their lives. But yeah, in terms of suicide rates, it is. I think you're right. It is higher in Alberta.
I think it's actually part of evolution. I think that everybody will experience some sort of tragedy or mental health or nervous breakdown, however you want to call it, while they're here on planet Earth.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, I think so. I don't think anybody's going to be exempt.
No, because I mean, we're human beings. We experience emotions and those feelings. And in order
Hmm.
to experience, say, some of the ones on the more like positive, light filled side, love, excitement, joy, it's like, how would you ever know really what that is like until you have experienced something that's maybe darker, right? I don't think necessarily that you have to always have that happen, but it kind of puts it into a different perspective. And I was actually talking with some of
Let's talk about.
the peer support workers at like my job. So these are people who have lived experience with mental health, and they're there specifically to talk with clients about their experience and like to show them, hey, just because you're going through this really challenging time doesn't mean you're like fucked, right? Like look at me, like I have a job and I'm
This.
doing something to support and empower others. But yeah, they kind of shared that similar thing, is like they feel through all the traumas and tribulations, whatever that they've gone through, that it's really helped support them and help them grow so much so that then they can support others, you know. And I kind of think of
Hmm.
like in the shamanic sort of world, that's what a lot of like shamans and that in like the tradition would be people who've experienced very significant like issues or traumas, right? Whether it's like severe sickness and like physical ailments as they were young, or something. And like a lot of different cultures now, the person is the one that's kind of like lost their mind, as we would define them, you know, as like the schizoid, like weird, total like crazy nut person. But it's like in other cultures,
Mm-hmm.
that person was seen as the one who was closest to like spirit and really could use the medicine in different ways, right? And they were taught
Mm-hmm.
and taken under someone else's wing who had experienced things like that, and then shown like a path, right, and allowed to find their power. And so I feel like it's important to kind of have a mix of both. And yeah, like we have had such a stigma against mental health, and it is changing, I guess, over 10 years or whatever it's been. So
Mm-hmm. Well, even Buddhism and other cultures, their belief system is to embrace the darkness.
mm-hmm.
And being that I grew up in, Western civilization, tainted for so many years. My perception was completely off, thinking that everything's supposed to be perfect and life is supposed to be perfect, and just what life is supposed to look like. And when it doesn't look like the way I thought it was supposed to look like, you kind of, instead of embracing it and thinking, okay, my challenges become my blessings, instead of thinking and embracing the actual dark parts of you and thinking, okay, well, this is helping me rise into my new state of consciousness. This is helping me like as a stepping stone, because I wouldn't be able just to appreciate all the rainbows and the sunshine and the birds and the butterflies if we didn't have the polarity of both
Mm-hmm.
to to measure it up against, right, Fola?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can't
And
really. Oh, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna just say like that, loving that shadow side or integrating the shadow. It's been kind of hard, I think, for us to do that as a human society, because for so long we look at like our magazines or all these types of places, the media, where you're fed how the perfect person should be, right? So now
Mm-hmm.
that's been definitely been changing too over the last couple of years, where people, you know, the whole like different movements of like not photoshopping the images of people and just allowing them to be who they are, like big, small, tall, short, whatever it might be, right?
So
So
yeah, everybody's beautiful.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah. Which could drive the comparison. Oh my goodness, you have to read this book. Um, well, I'm reading Alan James,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, he talks about comparison and letting go of that, and a lot of meditation. He talks a lot. Like this guy wrote this book 100 years ago. Like it's pretty phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So like comparison versus and judging, hey, because I think that's a good part of it. Like I guess we can maybe share a bit about our personal experiences with mental health. And then because I feel like when we dive deeper into what mental health or mental illness is, or that disease, it really is like a disconnect between ourselves living here and like our purpose of what we've been brought here to do, or that more meaningful, like purposeful life, right? That
Mm-hmm.
we've disconnected because of a wide range of things. So I don't know if you want to go
Mm-hmm.
first, Crystal, like sharing a bit about your story, if you'd like me to go.
Sure, I can share a little bit of my story. I don't even know where to begin. My brother did commit suicide 9 years ago, and it just shifted my whole world. And it put me into post-traumatic stress immediately. I never truly felt what anxieties was until he passed away. And I felt like somebody was suffocating me and sitting on my chest, and it paralyzed my body, and I couldn't move. It was very horrific situation. And if it wasn't, and then I had an array of different other just events, a very a traumatizing, separation with a gentleman that I really did care for at one point, and shamed me in so many different ways, made me feel very inadequate, and because I couldn't have children, and said he couldn't love me because I couldn't have a child. That really messed up with my brain, to be honest. Thinking, well, what man's going to love me if I don't have a child, or give them a child? So there was just an array of different things. And then I came from a very dysfunctional background. Not to get into it too much, but yeah, you kind of, it comes to a halt, and then you literally have a nervous breakdown, and you're like, what is this? What is my life? What's going on? Did I sign up for this, or did I create this? Or yeah, it's but if it wasn't for connecting with my spirit, if it wasn't for all these little things that I've implemented in my life, if it wasn't for yoga, showing up on the mat and seeing a psychologist and reading books and educating myself and just all these little tools, going to church, doing the 12 steps through church as well, and surrendering and giving myself over to a higher intelligence. And just, I'm a huge advocate of paying attention to what other people have gone through in their lives, and then following that same path. So one of my always has been since I was 17 years of age, Anthony Robbins. He came from a very dysfunctional background. He talks about how his mother was an alcoholic. She burned him with cigarettes, and look at him now, through forgiveness and through compassion and kindness. And it's easier said than done. Forgiveness is not an easy thing when you've been hurt,
Yeah.
So those are just some examples, that I've been just embracing for the last 20 years of my life. Doreen Virtue or Louise Hay, we're chatting about her. Somebody that I just love over the last probably 5 years, Gabby Bernstein. She was an addict, and she decided to hand herself over to a higher intelligence and be in service to God. And that's where she found her sanity, connecting with her spirit, right? So I respect that.
Yeah, you mentioned too, define a bit about God, but because you said earlier when we were chatting, like, God isn't necessarily this like humanomorphic being that we've created, so maybe touch on that for people.
It's very personal. Whatever you want to, your relationship with God is very personal. Nobody can tell you what God is. It's a very personal relationship. And whether you pray to Buddha or you pray to Jesus or Mother Mary, whatever your belief system is, Fred Flintstone, I love saying Fred Flintstone just to be really out there, but whatever your belief system is, praying to that that higher intelligence, God, source, you know what I mean? Just recognizing it and giving gratification on a daily basis, right? To sometimes I give a gratification 100 times in a day, just thank you. Thank you. And it's a very, once you have this like spiritual awakening, which I had the opportunity to 7 years ago, sitting on my bed, my grandmother said to me, Chrissy, this would have been about 8 years ago now, but after my brother died and she knew I was having a tough time, she said, Chrissy, pray to Mother Mary. She's a mother, she's nurturing. And it wasn't right away that I felt anything, but this one time sitting on my bed, all of a sudden I felt, and I was hyperventilating. I was just bawling. I couldn't get out of my head. And I felt this energy come into my body. I felt this like wrap their arms around me, wipe away my tears. And that was my aha moment. What was that? I want more of that. And I've just, yeah,
it's profound.
It is a profound moment, for sure it is. Yeah, it's a very profound moment when something, it's a beautiful moment. And now when I get this feeling all the time now, I'm so grateful when this higher intelligence comes through me, it actually brings tears to my eyes of joy, tears of happiness, tears of love. Like, thank you. And it comes at the most interesting times. and just I come into a state of gratitude,
Hmm.
remembering, oh yeah, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. I'm being provided for. I'm loved. I'm good. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I think is a huge part, that feeling alone part, which is a huge aspect of like depression, for instance. People feel alone. They don't feel like they have support. They isolate more and more, and that kind of perpetuates that cycle. But it's like learning that you are not alone, right? And there's different like forms almost of that depression. I feel like whether you want dark night of the soul and all these different things. So
But
yeah, thanks
it
for
was also
sharing.
part, yeah, it was part of my journey. I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that I listened to, like Abraham Hicks and Wayne Dyers and all that kind of stuff, it's part of my journey. It helped me evolve. It's my journey to embrace the darkness. This is my belief system. And yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome, Fola.
Yeah, because
How
I
about
think,
you?
yeah, I think it's important for people to talk about this stuff because you don't really know that, like you said, like people you walk across on the street and what they've gone through. Um, and I like to think, even say in the work environment, with the mental health program that I was with, there's a lot of people that we're dealing with, clients, and the staff can sometimes get off the phone and start talking in kind of like negative ways. As they call it, like black humor in our like education of as psych nurses, and I'm like, you got to have black humor, otherwise you'll like burn yourself out, right? But to me it's like there's difference between like always constantly being in like a negative, pessimistic sort of approach. And because you're burnt out yourself, that you keep
Mm-hmm.
saying things that are negative and joking about it, because, or then, using black humor in a way to really just like talk about an issue and then let it go and be back to your able to kind of cope mode. But there's a lot of times like staff will say things, but it makes you really think, well, what am I saying that's now being spread in the room around me with my colleagues who have also gone through some of these things or have family members who are going through, right? Because we have lots of people within our office that have been going through lots of different mental health issues or addiction issues, whatever, right? Like themselves, or at least their family or friends or whoever in their network.
Everybody knows somebody within like a 90-degree angle
Yeah.
that is experiencing something. And that was like a huge aha moment with, probably like 6-7 years ago. I noticed just kind of like a cycle with some of my soul sisters, my best friends, and they were going through their own personal journey, and we got talking, and I just have that personality. I shared what I was going through, and I opened up the door for them to feel
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable to share. I was sharing my journey with some of them. And so then we started talking about their journey. And then they're like, yeah, this is what I'm going through. And I lost this person and I don't know how to navigate with this emotion or whatever the case is. So that's what I noticed with vulnerability. When you lead with vulnerability, it opens up the door for other people to be vulnerable as
Yeah.
well in that space. And something really transcendent has happened to me in the last year, like just really embracing that whole vulnerability and letting go of the shame of perfection and all this kind of stuff, and just appreciating my journey for what it is, because it's allowed me to become the person I am today, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And instead of me having a plan, do you know what I mean? And yeah, it just opened up. It just, something magical happened with vulnerability. Something really beautiful has happened internally, and just allowing other people to be vulnerable. And I think that if there was one message that we can honestly, Fola, get across, would be vulnerable. Be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Because people have so much shame with their dark, deep secrets. It's killing them. And I was just thinking about that actually in the last 6 months, maybe 3 months. I've thought about it a lot. Like not being my true self, shame around my life, having like so much shame. And it wasn't until I really truly started being vulnerable and letting go of that, and understanding that we're all one, we're all going through something internally
Mm-hmm.
in our
Mm-hmm.
external world, right?
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
that's kind of how I felt like you know, and not everyone will notice. Because for myself, like in my experiences with mental health, like it really began in my first year university. And it was like in the start of the second term. I think it was like a mix of having been away from home for so long and then being back to see my family and then returning to like winter months in Canada, dark hours all the time, having to go to school. And something just wasn't like, it just felt like a mess, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I became like really depressed within like just a couple months of that returning home, like so much so like I wasn't going to eat anything, like the major signs of like depression, right? But at the time I didn't really know what was going on, which is so interesting, being I was studying psychology. You would think I'd like put two and two together, but it was because my friend, like one of my friends in particular, I'm very thankful to them. Like they were like, something's going on with you, Fola. Like I remember once they came to get me to go and eat, and usually I'd be the one, like if everyone that knows me, I love food, I would be the one to be like, yeah, like let's go get supper, right? But they came to get me, and I was just like, no, I don't want to go. And then it was like shortly after that, like she came and just was like, is everything okay? Like you're not your normal cheerful self, right? And
That's
she's
a true
the one
friend
that,
when
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, like she suggested, like you need to go and see a doctor, like let's go. And yeah, going to the doctor and then doing like the little tests, I was like, oh, like you're depressed, Fool. I was like, really? I'm depressed? But I remember like those were like dark times. Like I would just sit in the room
Yeah.
listening to different music, and there was like one particular song I would like listen to on repeat, and I would just like cry. I was just crying all the time, and I was just feeling such a this like disconnect and a lot of like like emotions of like connected to my family line, all this stuff. Honestly, I can't it was just a blur. But I remember at one point like where all of a sudden I had like suicidal thoughts, and that I knew at that point too, like this isn't normal, like what the hell's going on, because that wasn't like, where would that even come from? Why would I ever think that? So that was very interesting to know how lost that I could like become in that like really dark place. And to me, it was like a dark night of the soul, just because it just where it came from. I was really questioning my purpose at that point. I was kind of like, well, why am I in school? And there's something more I should be doing potentially, but like what? I kind of felt stuck because my family, I remember talking to them about wanting to do something like go and travel. And my parents were like, no, you can't do that. Like you'll regret that. But going to the doctor was definitely like a great step.
How
Because
could you ever regret traveling?
I know, right? But yeah, the doctor was good because at least they started me on medication. The medication definitely helped. It was a trial in that, which is obviously, I totally have empathy for people who are being trialed on all these different medications and like the side effects and that. And, like it was horrible, some of them. But then I found one that actually worked, and I was on that. And then I think I stopped it. And then it was like the following year or two, I got like depressed again. And again, like I kind of didn't even realize, but the way it manifested in my life was more, I wasn't waking up. Like I would just sleep all the time. And I ended up missing like an important German, like an exam. And I went to see my teacher. She's like, what's wrong with you? She was like, you love this class. Like, and it's true. Like, cause she'd known me for the 2-3 years before that. And she's just like, this isn't your normal. And then that's again, I realized, okay, yeah, like I'm oversleeping. I sleep through my alarm all the time, like not motivated, da, 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 da. I had to go back and like go back on medication. Right.
Yeah.
Which yeah, again, helped me. There's a whole other sort of stuff. But for me, like at those points, I was still in school. I was just doing what people wanted me to do. Like I didn't really think for myself, I would say, I was just like kind of just going through life like a robot, like falling asleep, right? And it wasn't until I had like that spiritual emergence, is what I would call it, where I literally, like I thought I was losing my mind. I wasn't like I'm very thankful that I had the supports in place, that I didn't have to be admitted to hospital, because that would have been a whole other thing.
So tell me a little bit more about this spiritual emergence.
Yeah, for me, like, well, it was like something that was elicited by an interaction with someone. But like the way I describe it is like, I thought I was drugged. I thought I had been drugged, right? Like during this interaction, which in retrospect, like, well, why would anybody do that? But my perception completely changed, right? Like the things I was seeing was shifting, the way everything looked, the way things sounded. It was very, like, it was so weird. I was like, has to be like someone's giving me like some type of a hallucinogen, but like it wasn't.
And
right?
you got this from the doctor. Or was this just?
No, this was another incident.
This was your experience of it? No way. This was a spiritual awakening for you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Fola.
But that's what got me into the whole spiritual emergence versus spiritual emergency versus mental health issue, because I began to experience things that when I was working in mental health at this point, because this was back in 2015, I think. Yeah, after my daughter.
Okay.
And so here I am working with clients, taking them to hospital because they're hearing things, seeing things, acting in ways, to provide them support. But then I'm going through things where I'm like, well, I think I'm losing my mind. Like, but I know I'm not really, because the things that came to me, like you said, right? You start being guided. Things start coming on your path that kind of are showing you like a truth.
If it wasn't for my grandmother Joanne teaching all this to me at a young age, and my Ukrainian grandmother also, and my Auntie Val implementing so much spirituality, like two different belief systems. But what I took from that is what helped me get through my hardest and my darkest times. Yeah,
for sure. That's how you have those people along your path, right? For
that's to plant those seeds, right?
Yeah. Because otherwise it's trust me, that when that event happened at that point, 2015, like I had my friend who's a psych nurse take me to the doctors, because I was like, either I've been drugged or like I'm losing my mind. Like, what's going on? The doctor's like, well, why would anyone drug you? And I wasn't, because too, like there's certain symptoms that present themselves with someone who's like becoming like floridly psychotic, as we would say, or, like the speech, things like that can really be nonsensical. And at that time for me, like I was making sense. Like I could like formulate my sentences and communicate. But and even then, I think sometimes for people who maybe have like Kundalini rising experiences where it almost presents like in the mania sort of sense. So there's just so much energy. They really struggle. They're talking fast, right? Things like that. It's like there are points in times where people, even if it's something else, like they should probably receive like medical help. Make sure that everything's okay. Like, are they eating and consuming enough liquid so they're hydrated enough or whatever, right? Otherwise, people can have more harm done to them, but there's definitely, I think the main thing that what I experienced with my like in my journey is the fact that there was always this questioning of like, what is my purpose? What am I doing? And like feeling that fulfillment in it. And that's what that final thing, 2015, not final, but that event, that really propelled me into that path, right? Of being like, well, I no longer have to listen to what other people tell me to do, or, live my life in a certain way just because I'm married or I have a kid or I'm doing this certain thing, right? Like I can be who I am and live my life, and also like work through the things that I've held on to, like you mentioned the forgiveness piece, right? Or whatever. And just like begin to live in a more empowered and fulfilling life. And that to me is like that basis of like
forgive yourself.
Health, right?
Have you gone through that? That's huge. Forgiving yourself. Yeah. Forgiving yourself for not being your authentic self, giving two shits what people think of you, and not showing up for your true self. Just all of it. Forgiveness of yourself in so many different aspects. That's really where I am in the last few years, is really truly working through forgiveness of myself. Yeah.
And like most people, I think, like that we've listened to Gabby Bernstein, all these people and others that aren't like spreading the word to millions or whatever. Anyone who's gone through like mental health, addiction issues, anything like that, I do believe that at one point in their life, they will come to that realization, right, of like what it's truly about. And it's no longer going to be about the story of, I have a mental health disorder and this diagnosis, because that comes up so much. I see with clients, like, I'm borderline personality disorder, I'm depression, I am this, and people stating it like the label is them. And I think it's important to embrace the label and not let it have fear or control over your life.
Let
But it
it conform
also,
you.
yeah, but it also needs to be something that you just see as, that is what I've been told, but it doesn't define exactly who I am. I'm not going to let like this depression or this certain thing control what I can or cannot do, you know, because that's a huge part of it too, I feel. And that's why I love like the peer support workers and the way most of like the mental health organizations are trying to shift it into like more empowerment, because it's for so long
They just
been, you
started.
can't
They
do
just started
anything.
doing that in the last year, didn't they?
Yeah, it's been a
In the
couple
last,
years or more.
yeah, where they brought in the peers with people that were having trials and tribulations in their own journey, and then trained them so that they would have that mirroring effect. Is
Mm-hmm.
where their perspective was, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's relatively like, it's becoming more common in, say, the normal healthcare system, that's for sure. But like peers have been around for a long time. There's
Yeah.
people who like start their own. They start their own organization or business, right? Because let's be honest, like, and that's anyway. I don't want to get, but that's something I've seen. It's like a lot of these, the healthcare system doesn't want to fully embrace it because it's still so pathologically focused and issue focused rather than empowerment. And I know they preach about recovery oriented models and advocacy and all this shit, but really when it comes down to it, we haven't fully embraced it. And I think until the staff themselves, oh my God, I told you I wasn't going into a rant, Crystal. But until the staff themselves can see this, how does this fall into line with their life as well, right? Have they struggled? Where can they be vulnerable? That's where you're better able to like support other people through that, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we all have to have had major mental health issues, right? Like there's things that we've all experienced in a variety of different areas of life that we can like learn, hey, like that was not easy for me, but I did it and I accept that it was a struggle or whatever.
Yeah.
But now I'm turning it into like a power story and helping myself live a life that's more empowering and fulfilling, and where it's also then influencing other people who may be going through the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is my thoughts. Oh God.
Well, nothing is perfect, but I think about it. Hopefully, it gets them on the right path.
Yeah.
That's really what it is, and that's um yeah, hopefully it gets them on the right path. That's all we can hope, right? You give them the tools. That's not any different than, you know, I've seen psychologists or therapists and for certain traumas and et cetera, and they give me tools. I implement it in my toolbox, and then because you're only with them for an hour a week, and what you do with the other 6 days or the other hours of the day, that is your responsibility to implement it, what they taught you, what they, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
to rise. And then also get outside the box. And like I said, yeah, it's everybody's different. Everybody's personality is different though, too, right? So, and that can be a challenge. Everybody's personality is different, and
Yeah.
navigating and trying to help everybody differently, right? Not everybody's an optimist. Not everybody's a person, like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Well, then what would we say, I guess, as people go forward this week, the next week, the next year, some ways that if, really for you to step into your power would be to embrace your emotions and feelings, right? And know that those are coming up for a reason. And sometimes it doesn't feel comfortable, right? I mean, being
No,
sad,
it
happy,
doesn't.
even sometimes for some of us, like those more positive feelings can be like, oh, we don't feel like we deserve them or whatever. So learning that the emotions are
But
something that
that's
you're going
also
to have
our
to
perception.
navigate.
That's our perception. We were taught, and the doctor that I was listening earlier today, we were taught that darkness is bad, crying is bad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so when we shift into a new perception, it's not any different than the Course of Miracles. A miracle is a shift in perception from love, from fear to love. Well, that's the same thing with your mental, like whatever is happening internally. Once you start seeing your dark parts or those tears that are, coming through you, it's actually a release. It's wanting, your body's wanting to naturally, transcend and take care of you and release. The worst thing that you can do is resist it, because it's just the same movie's going to be playing internally 8 months down the road, and you're going to have to, or even you're going to have to deal with it eventually. So the more we shift into a perception of understanding that these dark parts are an opportunity to rise, and we don't resist it. It's an opportunity. I think that's a healthy perception, Fola.
For sure.
What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with completely.
But there's generations upon generations, millions of people on planet Earth that are thinking that darkness is bad, thinking that, tears are bad, thinking that even anger is not a bad thing internally, as long as you're not in reaction mode and hurting people, right? But when you have a wave, an ocean, like a wave of a wave of emotion comes through you, and it's anger, that's your inner navigation to pay attention to your external world. So pay attention. Something's happening internally that it wants you to pay attention to, or it's allowing you to come into your next level of existence on planet Earth. So we just have to understand to embrace it.
And and like you said, I think earlier before we went live with this, is that if you struggle with doing those things or feeling those emotions, then obviously seek help from someone, like someone you trust, a psychologist, therapist, a coach, like a group of people that you feel you can go to. Yeah, like
a minister, a shaman. Like really get outside your box. Like try a little bit of everything. That's my personality. Try a little bit of this, try a little bit of that, wink wink, as long as you're not doing any harm like to yourself, like it's not gonna hurt to
have an open mind. I agree with that,
because
there's certain things, like even with the shamanic world, like we've done some like anger ceremonies and doing things like that. I never would have thought like, like very fascinating thing, but it really helps to integrate all those past experiences or whatever other intergenerational things, and heal that part, right? Because that was something I know anger was huge within, like for myself in my life. I probably still is, but at least I'm learning to like embrace it in a different way. It's not, like you said, it's
anger
not seen in a bad thing. It's like,
it's not a bad thing. It's going to be something that we experience till the day we die. Sadness is something that we're going to come in and out of till the day we pass away from Earth, right? It's not, these are natural emotions. It's just we've been tainted that they're not natural, and that we're supposed to always be happy and smiling and like but life wasn't designed to be always smiling and happy. And like I think that if you are sad for 1 or 2 days, observe that emotion, embrace that emotion. But if you're sad for like a month straight, like my psychologist said, that's when you have to implement something. That's when you need to shift.
And like you said, try different things, because sometimes medications work for some people and for others it doesn't. We're not downplaying medications or any of the like conventional models of like help people through mental health, because there's time and places for all that. And for me, the medications worked. I think that was what really helped me get out. But it doesn't mean you become reliant on those like tools, right? Same with anything else. You don't become reliant on the one thing. You find what works best for you and allow it to like support you and evolve as you evolve. Yeah.
So that's important. Yeah. To just allow yourself to be in, evolve naturally, in natural flow, right? With the universe is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, for sure.
What do you think, Fola?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Look at us owning that mental health day. Boom. And that's another thing I think. They should add mental health days to our employment options. No more sick days. It should be a wellness day. Because again, we're looking at this like negative pathologizing way of like approaching ourselves and how we like get better, right? And like take care of ourselves. That's a whole other topic, I'm sure.
Do you think that this gives people, are you saying like it should shift, like even Bell shouldn't be calling it Mental Health Day? It should actually be shifting to be called, let's say, Embrace Life Day, Rise Day.
Well, that's a whole other topic.
Well,
but I meant more like
the thing is, words hold power, Fola. Words
they
hold
do.
power. Words hold power. So if we're like vibrationally, we're saying, oh, it's Mental Health Day and it's Mental Health Week, or it's Suicide Day and it's this day and it's that day. That's virally going out into the universe,
and that's why it works.
And
like it's like the war on drugs, right? The war on drugs. We got to stop all the drug use. Well, the war on is continuing. Nothing's changing there. It's in fact is actually getting worse because we're putting our energy on we have a war on drugs, war on terrorism, more terrorism, breast cancer awareness. Well, you need breast cancer to have awareness of it. So of course there's still breast cancer. It's shit like that, right? And people just go into this mentality of like following whatever they're being fed by the media without thinking about the words. And so what I was really referencing was like, we have sick days within our employment as a staff. You get X amount of hours, sick days a month. But to me, it's like, why don't we shift the language from sick day to a wellness day? Because when I call in, if I'm even having like the fact that like I just cannot handle going in, like my mind, my emotions aren't where they should be, I won't be able to be of much help or support to the clients. That's not really me calling in because I'm sick. It's just me like being like, I'm taking care of myself and this is a wellness day, right? But they don't use that language. It's like, then I get into the thing of like, I have to be sick. I can't not be there unless something's wrong with me. It's like, nothing's wrong with me. I'm just taking care of myself, right? So when I honestly, the last year plus, when I called in, I'd be like, this is a wellness day. And then people would be like, what are you talking about? Is this a personal day? I'm like, it's called a sick day by you. I'm calling it a wellness day because I no longer choose to use that language.
I love you so much.
But like, I need to talk to the CEO of Alberta Health Services, and we're gonna try and shift that. But you know, again, people, it's just society, and yeah. But anyway, oh my gosh.
No, I
we're live. I have to be mindful what I'm saying.
No, I agree with you though, 100%. It is so okay. We create our own illness. We create our own illness. And we don't even do it deliberately, Fola. It's not something we do it deliberately. It just happens. It's you know, our bodies, or you know, like I'm really bad for that, actually. Not I want to say something that I'm very careful what I'm about to say, right? Because I gotta be
like you
mindful
said, compassion in that. But no, I think this is a good place to end it for sure, because we can have these conversations again on different topics, and because I think both of us agree in terms of the, you know, like I mentioned, right now, or the last few decades or plus, maybe 50 decades, there in society had been a shift from what we saw as within physical illnesses, those issues of like HIV and AIDS. You know, people are like, don't go near people with HIV, you're going to catch it. Like all these really negative, stigmatizing approaches to physical medical conditions. And that changed significantly. Now we're stepping into the world of the mental health conditions, right? And people are starting to realize that we were being stigmatizing towards that. And now that is shifting. And I think, I mean, whether you want to call it mental, emotional, those are kind of one of the two, like, same in a sense, but it's like we've gone from the more dense physical reality to now emotional and mental. And next we'll be going into that spiritual aspect. And I think that is what we were both agreeing on initially before we came on here, is the fact that people need to connect more to whatever spirituality means to them, right? And see that there's something deeper than the physical world, and whatever that purpose is that you have. Once we get to that, probably in the next decade, I'd imagine, because everything seems to be happening very quick, right? That's when people are really going to start like realizing something more and stepping more into that power. This is just kind of like those first sparks of it, right? So definitely there's more to have, more conversations to be had about this. But I guess for now we can leave the listeners with, seek out the help you need, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. Just embrace all those parts of yourself, light and the dark.
Be vulnerable, be vulnerable with your best friend, you know, your wife, your companion, be vulnerable, see a psychologist, and have no shame in it. What I have learned in the last 7 years of seeing a psychologist, I am so grateful for this information. It's brought me to a whole new understanding how I operate internally in this external world, and how to take care of myself and self-nurture and self-love, and because there's a lot of stigma about seeing a psychologist, especially for men, right, Fola? So it's okay to ask for help, right? It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to share your emotions. And you have to do it for survival on planet Earth. And it's just part of the evolution. So yeah, be vulnerable, share your emotions.
Yeah, for sure. So let us know what you think about this topic. We'd love to hear it. And we'll catch you guys again soon.
Thanks, Fola.
Thank you, Crystal. Okay, bye.
Okay, ciao.